The Castle Vecchio is located in Verona, in northern Italy. Built between 1354 and 1356, the castle was used throughout time as a fortress, prison, and armory for the Italian and Napoleon's army. This strategic position was reinforced by the presence of the Ponte Pietro, bridging over the Adige River. In the late 18th century, the facade along the river was redesigned in a neoclassical way, breaking with the medieval style of the building. In 1925, the Castle Vecchio became a museum under the orders of Antonio Avenna and architect Fernandino Forlanti, and has been a museum since. This technical report, however, mainly focuses on Carlo Scarpa's intervention in the 1950s. During the Second World War, most of the building along the Ponte Pietro was destroyed due to bombings. The bridge was rebuilt as it was before, however Scarpa was more daring in his preservation and intervention. His use of modern materials and the detailed approach to design create this additional layer to the heritage of the Castle Vecchio. Located at the heart of the city, the Castle Vecchio really holds a strategic position. The now museum's relationship with the bridge is crucial, and this can be seen through the lines dictating the form of the building. Scarpa's intervention can be found throughout the building, however this report will only focus on this section, which is the heart of Scarpa's intervention. In terms of materiality, the exterior of the building, facing the street and the river, really ties into the context of Verona, a medieval and Renaissance-style city. Passers-by would be right in assuming the building is a medieval fortress dating back to the 14th century. However, as one steps into the internal courtyard and admires the internal facades, Scarpa's intervention truly stands out, especially in the section analysed. It is interesting to note the differentiation that Scarpa carried out for the preservation of the Castle Vecchio. Scarpa's approach to preservation and architecture was different from Forlati's restoration taking place in 1923. Forlati, and the museum curator Avenna, provided the castle with a historical mask to convert it into a museum. They plastered the barrack front with a collage of Gothic finds and converted the whole fortified section into a palazzo. On the other hand, Scarpa was interested in distinguishing between the old and the new, highlighting the different layers and eras of architecture. Therefore, when Scarpa was commissioned to redesign the building, he decided to introduce some vertical elements to break up the symmetry of the building. In his view, the Venetian form of Gothic architecture was not symmetrical. He therefore moved the entrance away from the centre, then reorganised the windows, which weren't related to the background anymore, but to the internal wall. Although sustainability of the building was not generally considered in the 1940s, natural daylighting was a crucial aspect considered by Scarpa. His openings, especially on the south side, framed the position of the artwork inside, as well as the way in which light comes into the space. We can see that the northern walls are a lot thicker than the southern ones. In effect, this means that the sheer width of the wall acted as insulation. Furthermore, small openings fill the northern facade, whereas larger openings fill the southern one, allowing southern light and solar gain through these enlarged openings. The north opening and the shallow depth of the space allows cross-ventilation, which effectively decreases the demand of mechanic ventilation. Scarpa completely demolished a narrow strip of facade so as to expose the different hidden layers of the building. This became a place of synthesis of the whole structure, emphasizing it with the Can Grande della Scala statue. The structure created by Scarpa clearly shows this juxtaposition of old and more modern elements, and this is very much so evident when looking at the roof structure. The new copper roof extends above the statue, as well as the beam supporting it, adding a layer to the language of the facade and interpretation of the history of the Castle Vecchio. This, in effect, acts as a historical timeline and preservation of the Castle Vecchio through the use of materials and the atmosphere created. Scarpa wanted to make history come alive by a well-ordered juxtaposition of the fragments. Having a dialogue between different materials from different historical eras, placed close but apart at the same time. A good example is the newly laid floors set as a carpet, which were stopping for some distance short from the walls. The walls, in turn, stop short of the ceilings. At the same time, these separations allow space between visitor and the painting. The gaps also act as the frames of the floors. The floor is slightly altered, hence, when visitors come into the space, they would gain a feeling of floating out of the room. The weaving pattern on the door is inspired by Japanese aesthetics, and Scarpa was well known for his admiration of Japan. Sliding doors being the most popular door type in traditional Japanese architecture, Scarpa used a similar approach to openings in the Castle Vecchio. The handrails are made of steel and wood. As we can see, the wooden banisters are supported by steel rings, in turn attached to steel fixtures. This design originates and ties to the idea of floating in the space that we can find in his architecture and other rooms in the Castle Vecchio. The handrail also serves a purpose for the spatial arrangement. As the rooms were all redesigned for displaying sculptures and drawings, The handrails guided the visitor's way through the space. For Scarpa, museum architecture is therefore not simply a way of housing artworks, nor is it a display machine. It is a critical tool that makes art accessible and understandable.